Welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast. We're your hosts, Angela
and Carrie.
We all need help and support to stay future focused and challenged to courageously pursue the life God has called us to live. What we do matters.
Here on the Warrior Razor podcast, we seek Jesus first and use the skills, talents, and passions he has given us second.
Well, welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Angela Johnson. And on today's show, we have a very special guest, my dear friend, Kelly Broeg. Let me just tell you a little bit about Kelly. She's such a remarkable human. She's dedicated her life to making a positive impact in the world. She recently joined Her Song, which is a ministry of the Tim Tebow Foundation, as their community engagement coordinator in Columbus, Ohio. Kelly holds a bachelor's degree in human development and family studies from Bowling Green State University, and she's actually spent the majority of her career in the corporate world, specifically within the sales and commercial real estate industry. However, her true passion lies in helping others, which is why she spends so much of her time volunteering at her church through global mission trips, local outreach, and prison ministry specifically. And here's what happened. All of those experiences, they absolutely prepared her heart and ultimately ignited a fire and a passion that has now led her into full-time vocational ministry and nonprofit work. Kelly's commitment to Her Song's mission is it's unwavering, and she firmly believes and stands expectant to live in a world where one day every woman will be set free. Her dedication to this cause, it's so inspiring, and I hope you hear that through the interview today. And we are absolutely just so fortunate and so blessed to have her as a guest on the show today. And I just hope you thoroughly enjoy our conversation.
Welcome to the show today. We are so excited to have our friend, and I'm going to say our friend because you started out as Angela's friend, but any friend of Angela's is mine, and we've met a couple of times. So our friend, Kelly Broeg, on the podcast. So we have a more formal bio that we gave at the beginning, Kelly, but right now we just want to hear from your mouth. Tell us about who you are, that 10,000 foot overview. Tell us about Kelly.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited. And yes, our friend is the right answer.
Good.
We are all friends now, so we can celebrate that for sure. Yeah, my name is Kelly, and honestly, I think I'm just a lover of people. I'm a lover of plants, and just a lover of being with family and friends. That's really what my heart is and where I spend most of my time.
That's so cool. Okay, real quick. So I became an indoor plant lady during COVID, and I'm okay-ish plant mom. What's your favorite indoor plant that you can't kill?
Oh, okay. So they're called a college dorm room plant, but I actually don't know
the real name.
The real name for it.
Okay.
All over, and I propagated them everywhere.
Yeah.
But I would say the same thing. That really happened for me during COVID, where I was like, I'm gonna do this. That and making sourdough bread were my two things that I really thrived in during COVID.
Yeah, I never got into the bread, but the plants totally got me. I'm gonna Google college dorm plant because I feel like I need to add a few more to my house.
I'm clearly a plant lady as well. If you're watching us on video right now, I've got some back there as well. My husband is at this point like, Angela, please no plants.
No more plants, Angela.
Okay, I have to say this a little bit. I know we're going to eat up some of our time, but as we were preparing for this call, Kelly has been jumping through hoops, hurdling over multiple obstacles. So that's how we know that this call and this content needs to get out into the world, because you have a message and something to share, and the enemy does not want that to happen. So this is actually our second time trying to record this podcast. But on the very first one, we did get through the first intro piece before the whole recording. We had to dump it. But you said something on the first podcast that you are a kayaker, and I think that is such a fun fact about you.
I love that.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I agree with you. I think there is something or someone that does not want us to talk today, but we are talking. So thank goodness for that. Thank God for
Yeah.
that. But yeah, kayaking is something I love to do. But funny enough, I just like have not gone out much this summer. But I'm going out this week. I have plans
good.
this week. So, but I
That's
do.
so good.
It's just fun. I feel like it's a place to just get into nature, rest, relax, rejuvenate, and get some exercise along the way. So that has been something that's just always been fun for me.
That's so cool.
We talked
I
about
will
that
never kayak, but that's okay.
Carrie, what did you say last
I don't
time?
think you could ever convert me.
You said that's fun for you.
That's fun for you.
That's what you,
right.
yeah,
I
that is
remember
what you
saying that now.
said. You were like, yeah.
Oh, that's so good for you.
Oh, that's good. So yeah, she's a kayaker. She's a lover of plants and all the fun stuff that we heard in your bio.
Yeah,
yes.
people, which you're going to totally talk about with us today. So I love that.
Yeah.
So speaking of what we're chatting through today, in the podcast series, we're in content called our Small Beginnings series. And the benchmark passage is Zechariah 4:10, where the Lord does not despise the small beginnings; He rejoices to see the work begin. Will you kind of give us just a little bit of an overview, peel back the curtain about how your journey to where you are right now, your position with Her Song, and how the Lord has just kind of taken you on a little bit of a. It's been an interesting journey. I know the ins and outs a little bit from just our conversations, but will you let our listeners and our viewers know kind of just in a nutshell how God has just so creatively gotten you to where you are today?
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. It's interesting. Like I really, you asked me like 10 years ago if I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And I would certainly say, probably not. And I probably would have been so scared if I didn't, when God asks you to do things and to step into faith, it's easy or it's hard at the time. And you look back and you're like, I don't think I would have said yes if I knew then. So I think that's definitely been a big part of my journey. But, I professionally was in the corporate world for about 10 years and really was very much an achiever at that time, like trying so hard to achieve, and just always felt kind of this missing piece in my life, in what I was supposed to doing and my purpose. And that's really when I started coming back to the Lord. I knew the Lord at it through high school. It's really when I first, gave my life over. But then I walked away for some years, and so in those years of being just really in the business world, and I say that only because there was so much emphasis for me personally on achieving financial status, and then also what I was doing, it was all about money as well. So I think that ended up becoming an idol at some point, So when the Lord really started bringing me back to Him, I went on a mission trip in 2014 and really just heard Him so loud and clear at that time to start redirecting my steps. And so I think I'm pretty slow to learn from the Lord, and so I very much just took my time walking those steps, I would say, but I heard Him clearly. It just took me a long time to say yes and to move forward.
Why do we do that? Because I don't think you're alone in that. Why do you think that we struggle? Because I think you're speaking to the masses, actually, Kelly, when I think a lot of the listeners be like, yeah, me too. I'll raise my hand for that one. Why do we think that we are that way? I mean,
I don't know. It's scary to trust, right? It's scary to walk out into faith and completely trust that He has you. And it might not look like how you think you want it to look or be or feel, but ultimately we know that His way is the best way. And so I think probably some of it's that, right?
Yeah. Faith, having that faith and putting that trust in His hands. Yeah,
absolutely. So that mission trip really just started to spearhead me, just a conviction in me to do more and to seek more and to dial in. And so I found a church here locally in Columbus that I really started to just dive into, and little by little just felt the Lord kind of like an onion, just peeling away the layers at me. And I knew He wanted more from me, and I'd give Him a little bit. I'd be like, okay, here's my baptism, or here's I'll share a little bit of my testimony with someone. And so those layers started being revealed, and ultimately I started getting I always have had a heart for people, for vulnerable people. And I started to find like that niche, that lane within the church where I could really thrive. And that really looked like doing local outreach efforts, global outreach efforts. And then our church had announced working alongside prisons and going into prisons. And I heard the Lord so clearly about 5 years ago when it was first announced, say go. And I was like, what are you going to do with someone like me in a prison? I don't have family or friends that have ever been incarcerated. I mean, I had never really had any experience myself in that, realm, but I just knew, like, without a doubt, I was supposed to go. So since day one, when our church announced that, I had really been just all in for that mission. And from there is really when the Lord, I would say a good 5 years ago, just broke me and put me back together. I would say. And I was on my way, but I really let him do that work. And I mean, not with a little resistance, let's be real here, but there was certainly still resistance. But in that, so I'm working full time, and then really most of my spare time is spent with the church. It's volunteering, it's just doing different things. And then that really led to being offered a full-time role within the church, overseeing prison and local outreach. And so while it was like kind of this dream job, it was also terrifying because I was saying goodbye to the stability of the finances that I'd worked so hard to get to.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. I fought it really hard. As much as I wanted it, I fought it. And then I took a day, and I'll never forget. It was March 18th, about 5 years ago. What's that math? Sorry.
Well, while you're thinking through that, I think you didn't. We don't talk about this in your bio. So you're single. So it's not like, I mean, you're a single income provider. So when you think about, that's why it was such a step into the unknown, stepping out into the depths of. It's a big deal when you can't fall back on somebody, a dual income household kind of situation. So I feel like that's very important too. And it speaks to the obedience of faith that you stepped out and did that. Albeit begrudgingly maybe at times, but you eventually got there, right? So
no, Angela, that is a pivotal point. I think thank you for sharing that. And I hadn't lived with anyone since college. I was making really good money in my own condo. And so to make that transition meant everything in my life had to change.
Right.
Where I lived, what my lifestyle looked like, I didn't get to go get my nails done every 2 weeks anymore. I didn't get to go do the things that like I'd accustomed myself to.
Right. First world problem. Yeah.
Right. Like super privileged to say that, but like that was true. So ultimately, I spent this day, I prayed, and I heard the Lord say three things. And it was, quit your job now. Like it felt like today. And I was at the time like, are you kidding me, Lord? And then it was improve your relationship with your parents and work on your health. And it was those three things that day that I just knew
I just got chills.
I was supposed to do. And so I prayed about it. And I remember I called my parents that day. They were on vacation in Florida. I apologized to them for some things that had happened in our journey together. It'd been kind of it's been a long journey. Let's just call it that. And I went into work the next day and I quit.
Wow.
And my boss was like,
and you're out of church, so you're doing a good thing.
Well, no, I was.
This is the corporate job.
This is the corporate job. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to sum this up, but it's just kind of a long story.
No, it's good.
I'm in the corporate world, and I go to my boss, and he starts crying.
Oh, wow.
And he says, he's happy for me, but then he was like, how about, it sounds like you did what you were supposed to do in obedience. And he's not even a Christian man here. And then he said, but I'm happy to keep you on until you know for sure of what's next. And because I knew that the church was going to probably offer something soon.
But what grace in the obedience, even in that covering, the bridge covering between the worlds.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was crazy. I can't believe I did it, honestly, when I look back. So I did stay on, and then the church officially gave me a offer a few months later, and then I just rocked and rolled at that for a few years, and that was all during COVID. It was like the year before COVID, during COVID, and then post like the year after COVID. So there was a lot happening there. We were running really hard to figure out how to, make things work in the community. So it was just wild. It was kind of like this crazy thing of like, okay, going from corporate world. Oh, I forgot something too. In that, I left the condo I was in, and I moved in with a friend of mine who was 10 years younger than me. And I lived in this tiny little bedroom, and I sold everything I had. Wow. And so the only thing I had was my clothes and a TV and my bed and a nightstand.
I mean, you really have to hear from the Lord to just have that sacrificial obedience. It's like the disciples when he was like, come follow me. And they're like, peace out, leaving everything behind. I mean, you embodied that. I mean, it's huge.
It was really scary. I cried a lot. Like, I wouldn't say it was easy at all. And I half the time was kind of yelling at the Lord. It's like, I don't understand. I don't understand this at all, And to put a real quick pin in that, I was able to do all this because I had a ton of student loan debt from some really unfortunate situations that had happened and how I got there. And I worked really hard to pay off most of what I could. Then I had a family member that kind of came in at the 11th hour and paid off the rest of that debt. And that really allowed me to be able to truly walk and say yes to this role. And that family member doing that was really a lot of because of my sister's obedience to the Lord and some things. So that's a whole nother story for another day. But so he set me up, he set me up for
yeah, you totally did.
I'm gonna get you to a place where you can go and do work for me. So you're gonna be debt free. You don't need to worry. The worry now is your own pride, essentially.
Yeah.
And so that was is still probably the battle as I get to the further parts of my story. So, but yeah, so, ran with the church. It's amazing. I loved every minute of it. I really knew it. So I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is where you want me, Lord. Just amazing God-sized things, only God things happening in those 2.5 years of ministry at the church. And really through that role is how I landed in the role I'm in now.
Okay.
But what's interesting is when that happened and got connected to the role I'm in now, things were changing with my living situation again and where I was. And yet the Lord provided again. So a friend of the church had reached out and said, hey, I have this whole apartment that's connected to our house. And my parents lived there for so long. They're no longer around. We want to gift this to someone.
Wow.
And so the operations director at our church said, I know just the person, because I had been praying with him and talking to him, and he'd been helping me and leading me in that. And so I was able to then take another leap from that position to Hersong. I took another pay cut to work at Hersong from the church, which you nonprofit people out there know that it ain't much.
Right. You don't go into nonprofit to be rolling in the dough.
Yeah, exactly. And so I ended up getting to move into a beautiful apartment on a beautiful piece of land, and they've gifted that to me rent free. No utility costs for the last almost 2 years, actually. Wow. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So anyway, that's kind of a wild ride. I feel like I jumped around a little bit, but those are just some high level, really cool points. And the only explanation for all of that is God. And so, is each time it's been a really scary yes, but he just
I feel like
honor.
Yeah. We need to pause here. And if there's a listener or somebody that's they know that they've heard from the Lord, and maybe they're dragging their feet, or they're being almost disobedient and following through on something that God has nudged their spirit to do. And God speaks to us all in different ways, dreams, through other people, through our time alone with him. But if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is telling you to do something and you're kind of dragging, let Kelly's testimony just encourage you and inspire you that if he's calling you to something, you're responsible to be obedient with it, not the outcome of that obedience. And he's going to make a way. And just just how he's done it for you, Kelly, is just so creative. Okay, no, you don't have to worry about your living situation. Yeah, you might have to swallow your pride a little bit on the fact that you thought you would be someplace in life that you maybe are not, where we have these thoughts in the timeline of our lives. Okay, I haven't arrived at this yet, but through the obedience, he can then use us and position us for the will that he has for us. So, be encouraged. I'm encouraged. Just listen. I've heard the story already, and I'm encouraged every time I hear
it. Very cool. Yes.
I mean, truly cool. Praise the Lord in that. Yeah. Praise the Lord. And I would say to the listener too, just don't give in to what you want, and just give in to what he wants, because he just does provide. He just does.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to hear you. Okay. So when we first started this, you said, it took me a long time. I, didn't do this. And that may be like true in like the sense of the reality of time. But then I hear you say some things like, on that day, I heard from God, and the next day I quit my job. Like, that's not taking your time. So in the sense, I can understand why you say that, but it encourages me to hear you say, when you sought out God and firmly heard from him, you did not waver. And like you said, that doesn't mean it was easy. That doesn't mean that you didn't like think you're, going crazy and cry through the whole thing or whatever. But just to hear, to piggyback off of what Angela said, to hear you say, I quit my job the next day. And then in God's mercy, he allowed me to stay on until the church job came through, and just things like that. I'm just so encouraged. I'm really hearing the full story of this for the first time. So so encouraging.
The other thing I think is really raw and appropriate to circle back with is the fact that you didn't just be like, okay, Lord, fully surrendered, palms up, here I come, do with me as you will. Like, you argued with him, and you were frustrated. And I think that's okay. Like, those are real emotions. And I mean, I know that even stepping into full-time vocational ministry, from my background, like, there have been many times that I've questioned, like, is this really? Did I hear you right? Maybe I should just look online and see if there's a job in the nursing field, because that's kind of my background. So, I mean, can you speak to that a little bit, about that that tension point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how the best way to say this is, but I would not sit here and ever say that I am just like this perfect model Christian, because I'm just not. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I wrestle. I have real frustrations for sure. I would say, even when I worked full time at the church, like, as beautiful as moments as there were some where I wanted to scream, and ultimately that's probably just working with people, right? And then even same with her song, like, and I say this to my leadership all the time. So, it's been hard. It's been hard to step into a complete unknown place and just trust. And so, I would say that struggle is very real. As I can sit here 5 years later, would I do it all over again? Yes. And so I think that's the reassurance to me that, like, I was walking in God's will. And so I think when there ever feels like there's tension or opposition, ultimately, is that from God, or is it from the enemy? Is that from everyone and everything? And I would also say this. Ultimately, both times I made those moves, I wouldn't say that I had all this like support from outside family.
That's good.
Either. It is a really important part of this story, because both times I didn't ask people's opinion. I really just went to the Lord, and then I made the decision, and then I moved forward. I mean, there might have been like one or two select people that I trust, and that could give me good wisdom, that I knew I could come alongside me. But outside of that, I just did the decision with God and with a couple of those trusted people. And then when I would say those things, it's so funny how quick you are to get feedback and opinions from people who they think it should be a way, and people you love and trust, and you would want to hear something like the encouragement, but you hear the opposite. And so I think that's just also something really to lean into if you're in a place, if the listener here, you're in a place of just like, well, someone's telling me this and someone's telling me that. I encourage you to block all outside voices and go to God, and then maybe to one wise person in your life, for that wisdom, because ultimately, if God's asking you to do it, then he's going to lead you. And those people and those friends hopefully come, or family, hopefully come alongside and support, even if it doesn't feel like they will in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, and that's also true that it's your calling. It's not their calling. And so they won't fully ever grasp the depth of it or the time that you've spent seeking him, or the conversations. Like, they're not in on those. It's not their call to pick up or to fully grasp. And that, I mean, I get that. Like, that's fine. I appreciate your concern.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that you would wrestle with that on my behalf, but I'm going to lean into this. And his word says that I'm going to direct you. If you stumble this way or that, I'll redirect your steps. And so we have to rely on that faithfulness too.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Will you talk to us a little bit about your role with Her Song? Because we've been in conversations with a lot of women who have started something from nothing. They had a vision, they had a dream, and they're building something. And Carrie and I work with women in leadership and ministry within the Warrior Women Tribe, and we'll put content on that for the podcast for anybody who's interested. But oftentimes those are women that are called to begin something, to be entrepreneurs or in an industry where something they're beginning from the ground up. But you walked into something that was already established. Will you talk to us about how much was established, and then where you picked off from the baton and where you are now?
Yeah, I want to give a kind of a high level overview just so listeners understand. So Her Song is a ministry of the Tim Tebow Foundation. The Tim Tebow Foundation is, I don't know if you know Tim Tebow, but he is a well-known ex-football player, baseball player. I don't know if that was the right way to say that, but what he is an incredible follower of God and an incredible leader, and someone who loves people mercilessly. Oh my gosh.
Mercilessly. Yeah.
Okay. I shouldn't try to say words I don't know how to say.
There we go.
Hey, we're real. We are coming to you raw.
Yeah, we are here. But he's just an incredible leader. So years ago, he started the Tim Tebow Foundation, and so essentially that's 4 main kind of lanes of ministry. One is anti-human trafficking. One is people with special needs. One is people with profound medical needs, and then people in orphan and foster care. So to date, there's 28 ministries that fall under the Tim Tebow Foundation and land in one of those lanes. And so Her Song is one ministry of 28 ministries that lands in the anti-human trafficking lane. In the anti-human trafficking lane at the Tim Tebow Foundation, there's 12 ministries doing anti-human trafficking work, both domestically and globally. So Her Song's focus is to work with the long-term care of survivors who are coming out of human trafficking, and really bridging them from a survival-based mentality to self-sufficiency. So with that said, when we talk about small beginnings really goes back to the founders of Her Song. So 11 years ago, Her Song was founded by 2 women who heard a call specifically from God to serve this specific population of women 18 years and older who have come out of a life of sex trafficking. And those women, really, if you think about 11 years ago, I feel like for better or for worse, human trafficking is more of a buzzword today.
Yeah, you see more of it, you hear more of it today.
Right. But it really wasn't 11 years ago.
No.
And so you think about, wow, what a specific call on the lives of the founders of Her Song to hear that, and then to just take action. And so started extremely grassroots in Northeast Florida. in the Jacksonville area to just start doing something. And so one of our founders is a counselor by trade and started kind of working with women on that perspective of counseling. And our other founder was doing a lot of outreach in the community and just, connecting with law enforcement, connecting with other agencies, and just ways to like, how can we help with this issue,
Mm.
And, so when I think of grassroots, I mean, it was like no money. They were truly, I feel like, I mean, I wasn't there, but just from what I hear, living on faith and prayer and just the trust and in the calling that God had on their lives to do something. And so I think that's a really important piece, because 11 years ago, I know they've told me they could never imagine it would be where we are today in terms of the people we get to reach. And so, you fast forward about 5 years, and now there's like a fully realized kind of programming in Jacksonville, Florida, and then that's kind of, excuse me, what we've replicated as we've grown. And so that what that means is 3 homes, phased programming, and then a commercial building for offices and programming for the ladies that we serve. So you think that 3 homes and commercial building model then kind of gets just replicated,
multiplied.
Multiplied. Thank you.
Different cities.
Yeah. So, and that didn't happen though until 2020. And that's when her song became an official ministry partner of the Tim Tebow Foundation. It really was fall 2020. And with the backing of the Tim Tebow Foundation, was able to take this model that was based on evidence and research and all sorts of things and kind of move it forward. And so now we are in 4 cities, or we're going to be in 4 cities. So Jacksonville, Florida, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Columbus, Ohio, and soon to be Albany, New York. So the idea is there is a huge gap in long-term survivor care. And how can we fill that gap? And that is just the whole heartbeat behind who her song is. And so it's focused on residential care, care coordination, and victim outreach. And so I say all that to say, okay, wow, you're amazing, her song, for doing what you've done for all these years and moving the needle forward. But I think also what happens is, so we've had that model, but then when we go into new cities, it is like a new beginning again. So there's a lot of the programming itself is established, but then there's a lot to figure out. I mean, there's location of undisclosed housing. Where are we going to put our buildings? How are we going to hire staff? Hiring the right staff, like all the community partnerships that have to happen, all the fundraising that has to happen to be able to sustain this model. So, it's almost $1 million a year to sustain this model in every city. And so there's just a ton of moving parts that really, all the volunteers, so many things that have to happen. And so when I stepped into that role, I was definitely stepping on the shoulders of some giants of faith for sure. And so that was a blessing. But there was a lot to figure out, because Chattanooga and Columbus were launching at the same time, and they had never done that before. So everyone was kind of figuring it out as we went a bit.
Build the car as you're driving it.
We might have said that phrase, we're building the plane as we fly it, a couple hundred or maybe 1,000 times. I'll be okay if I never hear that phrase again, to be honest.
Good. I didn't say that. I used a different vehicle. So ultimately, and I would say again, to go back to some raw feelings, so many times I just wanted to run away. Like I really did want to just run far away. Because it sounds easy, but it really wasn't easy. And it's still not easy. I mean, there's still there's still a lot to figure out, but ultimately, it's for the one, right? For the one person that gets to get on the other side of their trauma and their pain.
Yeah. I love that you say that it's for the one. I remember when we had an initial meeting a few weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I had asked you, because I've been involved in a couple of different groups that help women in sex trafficking. And I had asked you, I said, your homes, how many do you keep in there? And I think you said 8, correct me if I'm wrong, but up to 8 women. And I'm like, man, that feels like 8 women at a time. I wasn't shocked that it was a small number, because when you're working with a population of women with such trauma, I'm sure it has to be done small. But some people would look at that and think, man, 8 women, like that's not a big deal. But man, when you drill that down and think all of this, if one woman is changed, is absolutely worth it. Like I get chills thinking about just the excitement over that one woman. The Bible says the same thing about one believer coming to believe in Jesus. This heaven celebrates that. And so having that idea of like the one in your head is just such a neat, and you help more than one at a time, like you said, but it's neat to think about how that one is just as important as any organization that helps thousands. And that's great that they help thousands, and maybe in the longevity of this, there will be thousands of women, but that one is worth the hard work. And I bet that has to be kind of like the heartbeat every time you're coming in, doing these new things, wanting to quit, thinking, is it worth it? But to think that one woman is changed for the better and meeting Jesus. I mean, I again, it just gives me chills. It's so neat to think about. And I think that is a special, I think not everybody has that perspective and mentality and can keep that perspective and mentality. I think he gives that to some people, and obviously he's given it to you to just stay in the work and keep working.
Well, and I think too, there's so much in the culture that is about numbers. All the things, all the likes, the followers, how many people are you influencing?
Yes.
I
so
think
good,
that
Angela.
we get totally caught up in that mindset, and we lose the forest through all the trees. And so and also too, when we step into a role of ministry, and we've talked about this on the podcast, vocational or not, all of life is ministry, right?
Yes.
The ground we stand on is our platform. When we step in as people who are executing a calling, we are in turn benefited by that obedience. So yes, you're helping the victims in this long-term care space, but I would wager it's probably a safe thing to say that the people that are coaches, that are your staff on site, that they are blessed themselves to be a blessing, even in all the hardship, all the muck and the mire that they are seeing every day, walking in hand with these women who are coming out of these life. They're vulnerable. They have been just destroyed by the world's standards. But I'm sure that they are also blessed to be a blessing in that too. So it's like a full circle kind of a thing.
I mean, it really is. I mean, it honestly isn't like, Carrie, to go back what you were saying, like, the numbers vary. We only have, there's not a lot of beds in each house. And so, and most of the women that we have, we've actually done incredible, it's incredible how many women come and they stick and they stay, because ultimately they're at will. They're there at will, right? And they have a choice to be there. And so that's, their choice to stay or to come to not. And when I look at across the country, we have the opportunity to also, if someone needs to like leave a city and go to another city, then we have beds in different places. And so it's really nice to be able to kind of have that meshing. And I say that only because, again, when we go back to small beginnings, who would have ever thought that we'd be in 4 locations when they just kind of started from the ground up? But I digress a little bit. So, ultimately, I would say the most full circle moment, it just happened like 2 Fridays ago. So just to rewind a minute, I told you about how I was gifted this apartment and this place to live. So it's on a beautiful property, and there's a pond in the backyard. And some of the women in our program here locally in Columbus, because we've just only been open 5 months here in Columbus, by the way. But 5 months in, there's the women that are currently in our program, they wanted to be baptized. And so we got to make that happen at the property that I currently live at. And baptize the women there. And it's almost 2 years to the date that I started working at Her Song. My anniversary is this month. Moved into that home, I think it'd be just a little under 2 years as well. And so I was very emotional that day, watching women be baptized in the place that God gifted me to live in a season of my life that I literally didn't know how I was going to be able to financially provide for myself.
Yeah.
And then this beautiful, like, new birth of life happened. And so ultimately, in those moments where I'm shaking my fist and want to run so far, it was like every bit of it was worth it. And in that moment, because I was the only employee for her with her song for a full year. And now
that's crazy.
Now we've got 12 employees in Columbus. And we're continuing to have more as we go into. We're getting ready to enter in our second house and all these things. And so when I look at, like, For the One, when I look at small beginnings, when I look at trusting God in the storm, or what feels like maybe the storm, like, I've only seen His fruit on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's so good. That's so encouraging.
Yes.
And it's heavenly economics. And I think we just get in the way sometimes, and we struggle with it, but it's like, why would we doubt? Because He's a faithful God, and He doesn't change yesterday, today, and forever. He's the same God. And it's like He multiplies bread and fish.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't He multiply it for us right now in 2023 as well?
Yeah.
So I think that's a message that regardless of what lane of life that you're in, it will speak to you.
Yeah.
I love that you said heavenly economics. I often joke with people that, like, it's the absolute worst business plan you could ever, when we think about almost $1 million a year to run a program that, I don't know, I don't want to throw out numbers here, but it serves smaller numbers of people. But it's the heavenly investment. It's the, the other side that matters. But I always do joke, I'm like, the ROI is awful. Like, and so telling that to, like, businessmen is like, or business women, business people in general, like, there's hard comprehension.
Well, and it's like the tithe. The world doesn't understand the tithe. Like, why would you want to give a portion of it? Well, guess what? Because it doesn't belong to us anyway.
Yeah.
That it's so symbolic of this analogy that I've heard and read and written about personally. But it's like, we can count the seeds in an apple, right? Open up an apple, see the core, on average, probably 5 seeds. But we will never know how many apples can come from that single seed. And it's like, that's why the one matters, because yes, it's a hefty investment in for what seemingly it appears to be very few numbers, but we don't know on the timeline of that one survivor's life what amazing fruit's going to come from their time with her song. So I mean, I think
so good.
That speaks to a lot of people wherever they are. So,
and what's incredible, I think, ultimately is, since her song's been around for so many years, we're now seeing the full circle of women that have come through our program in other cities who are now on staff with us. And being promoted into higher positions on staff with us. So you just have like the ultimate full circle there of all of it, and I don't think there's anything better.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the biggest piece of encouragement that you could give to those that are in their small beginnings, or maybe they stepped into something that maybe someone else started, like David with planning the plans of the temple, but Solomon's taking over the fulfillment of the temple. You know what I mean? We bring it back to the Bible. What's something that you would share to our listeners or our viewers that might encourage them in any area of their small beginnings right now?
I would say a couple things, like right off the top of my head, is mentors. If you don't have a strong mentor, and I think you can have different mentors, right? You could have a spiritual mentor. If it's a business mentor, someone, it doesn't have to be the same business you're in, but someone that knows how to lead people, someone knows how to handle tough situations, someone you can trust. So different areas of life, different mentors. And then, I think what I said earlier, just remembering if it's from the Lord and He told you to do it, that's between you and the Lord and maybe two other wise people that can come alongside you. And then from there, it's for you to really run and and position yourself in a way to share your vision, and so that it becomes no one else's opinion, but it becomes your calling, ultimately, and what God wants you to pursue. So I think that's really important. And then, I mean, I feel like anyone can say this till they're blue in the face, but I think just truly having those real raw conversations with God, the happy ones, the sad ones, the mean ones, the ones where, explicits might be coming out, but he still loves you anyway, because he's God, and so I think just being super real and what does my relationship with Christ look like, and seeking him in those moments. And so, and then I think just don't give up. Like, if that's where you're supposed to be, keep pursuing it.
His time is not our time. I think our timeline looks very different than what he has planned for us, but just to not give up, keep going.
Even
That's
when
great.
you want
All of
to,
those.
it's probably the enemy that's saying give up, not God, right? That's a question I ask myself a lot. Is this from God? And is this God's best for me? Or is it from the enemy?
Okay, so final question here. How can we find you, your business? How can people support the work that you're doing? All the things.
I would love for anyone that's interested to come alongside Her Song in Columbus. And if you're not in Columbus and you're in another city, or in a national level, there's just a lot of ways to get involved. But from a volunteer standpoint, we have lots of things, from being behind the scenes to being in direct care with the women we serve. Of course, there's a vetting process that goes along with that. But that's really important, right? Like, to build a community around a group of women who have never had godly community, who have never had people that truly love them. They've never had people they can trust. And so we're helping build that through volunteers. And so if that's something you're interested in, there's a lot of opportunities. I won't get into the nitty-gritty details there. I think financially, like I said, it costs $800,000 to $1 million a year to run this program once it's fully realized in each city. So, if you have any want to give, like that, come alongside us in that. Or if you know opportunities of fundraising, you have creative ways to fundraise. That's a big part of my role, and so would welcome that. And ultimately, I think just be a friend of Her Song, be a friend of TTF. That's what we usually call people that come alongside of us. It's our family, our friends. Like, pray with us, join us. Just in the efforts. And I think educate yourself on what is human trafficking, because ultimately, we serve one small population of the issue of human trafficking. We are serving women, specifically 18 years and older, who have typically been through sex trafficking, maybe some labor trafficking. But there is so many other types of trafficking. It doesn't discriminate against gender, age, race, socioeconomic status. It literally it hits every person in every part of the world, in every neighborhood. And so if you are a vulnerable person, essentially you could somehow end up being a victim of some sort of trafficking. So I think ultimately making yourself aware of the issue and not turning a blind eye to it. Because I think that just puts us in a precarious situation when we pretend like things don't actually exist, when it's very real. One quick statistic, and I'm weird on statistics because I feel like typically statistics are based only on what's reported. But this is a good one. This industry it's $150 billion industry. So that's more than like the NFL, Nike, Apple, and one other major corporation that I cannot remember right now combined. So when you think about just the magnitude that this industry generates, it's huge, And so anyway, we can kind of just come alongside in awareness, care, and love for this population of people.
Well, you talked about it, how 11 years ago it wasn't kind of a thing that was discussed. So yes, it's amazing that the conversation has come underneath it and we're hearing more about it, but let's let it be more than just a buzzword. Let's
not become numb to it.
So ultimately, we have a website, hersong.org. We have an Instagram handles, Facebook handles. I think you guys are going to include that.
We'll put it in the show notes.
But feel free to check us out. You can DM me, email me, and I'd love to.
Is it at Her Song, but there's one specifically for Columbus too, correct?
Yeah, at Her Song Columbus is our Instagram handle, and then Her Song Columbus is our Facebook handle.
All right. Well, any last thoughts? Anything you want to just put out there into the universe with our listeners?
I thank you for thank you guys just for having a platform to talk about all different things, right? Just where we are as women, where we are in our journeys, and then just an issue that's so prevalent today. So I feel like it was just nice to be able to hit a lot of different things. And I would say, this is what I would say. I'd say if you are someone who feels conviction in your heart to do something about something or to pursue something that you've never pursued, like this is your call to just go do it right now.
Yeah.
Is it volunteering somewhere? Is it, going deeper with someone? Is it having a hard conversation? Is it pursuing a business? Just do the scary thing. Do the thing that you don't want to do, but the Lord's calling you to do it. Follow that conviction.
That's awesome. And I think too, you started in a very different place than where you are now. And so maybe someone has an idea of where they want to be. They see it in their mind's eye, but they're being asked right now to watch kids or serve as a Bible study leader or whatever it is. So we don't despise the small beginnings.
That's right.
He rejoices to see the work begin. And from that obedience, he will multiply it. And we might stay where we are, and that's the call of our life, and we be obedient to steward that. But he might take us on a path that doesn't make any sense to the world. But through the obedience, even if it matters for the one, we're going to make an impact for him.
That's
for
right.
his it's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Carrie, anything else?
No, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, but that's about it.
Okay, good. All right. Well, to all of our listeners, aim your arrows well.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation, please go ahead and like and share it. You can also find us on www.warriorrazor.com.